You know, every single day, social media unleashes this torrent of information. We're talking posts, replies, memes, full-blown debates. Trying to make sense of it all can honestly feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hose. So how in the world do researchers, journalists, and even just curious people like us begin to understand this massive, chaotic digital world? And this question from a user on Reddit, it just hits the nail on the head, right? It's a question that students, academics, and professionals everywhere are asking. They're all trying to study our digital lives, but so many of them just aren't sure where to even start. So let's tackle that question head on. First, we're going to break down the sheer scale of this data flood. Then I'll introduce you to a tool that puts some seriously powerful research capabilities into anyone's hands. We'll walk through how you can do your very first data harvest. Then I'll show you how to turn all that raw data into actual insights. And finally, we'll talk about why any of this really matters. All right, first things first, let's really wrap our heads around the core challenge here. The absolutely overwhelming volume of data and the fact that, well, getting your hands on it has become harder than ever before. Think about it like this. Experts call it the fire hose. It's literally a real-time stream of every single public thing happening on a platform like Blue Sky, just flowing out, second by second. It is an endless gusher of information, and to do any kind of research, you first have to figure out how to even tap into it. But here's the thing, the game has totally changed. You know, back in the day, maybe a decade ago, researchers had way more open access to data from the big platforms. But now, those stores are often locked behind super expensive subscriptions, which puts this kind of critical research way out of reach for a lot of students, journalists, and independent analysts. Okay, so if getting the data is way harder now, and the amount of data is totally overwhelming, how is anyone who isn't, a coding genius supposed to study social media? Well, that brings us to a whole new generation of tools designed to level that playing field. So, meet Communalytic. You can think of it as a powerful research assistant that just lives up in the cloud. And the magic word here, the thing that changes everything, is no code. It's built specifically for people who have really important research questions, but don't necessarily know how to write complex computer programs to get the answers. And it's really versatile. It's not just for one or two platforms. We're talking about a whole range of important places online, from newcomers like Blue Sky and Mastodon to the established giants like Reddit, YouTube, and yeah, even X. All right, so we get the problem, we've got the tool, let's get our hands dirty. How do you actually go from a simple question in your head to a real data set that you can start to analyze? First, a super quick definition. The magic behind the curtain is something called an API. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. Just think of it as a special digital doorway that lets a tool like Communalytic talk directly to a social media platform and say, hey, can I have this specific data? It's the bridge between your question and the information. And actually doing it is way easier than you might think. It's basically just 4 simple steps. First, you give your project a name. Second, you type in a search query. You just tell the tool what you're looking for. Third, you narrow things down with some filters, like a date range. And finally, you just click a button. The tool takes care of all the complicated technical stuff for you. So what does one of these queries actually look like in the wild? Here's a real example from a study about Ireland's 1916 Easter Rising. This query is looking for any posts that have either the hashtag 1916 Rising or the exact phrase Easter Rising. That little vertical line just means or. Then it narrows those results down to only include posts that also mention the words women and centenary. See? This is how you build these incredibly specific searches to find exactly what you need. Okay, so congratulations, you've harvested your data. But let's be real, a massive spreadsheet with thousands of posts, that's not the answer, right? It's just the raw material. The next step is the analysis, and that is where the hidden stories really start to come out. So generally speaking, you can go down 2 main paths here. The first is text analysis. That's where you're looking at the content, the words, the phrases, the themes people are talking about. The other path is network analysis. That focuses on the connections, who is talking to whom. It's the difference between analyzing what was said versus how the conversation was structured. Let's start with social network analysis, or SNA for short. This method basically turns the social structure into a map. Every account is a node. Think of it as a dot on the map. And every interaction, like a reply or a mention, is an edge, a line that connects those dots. By mapping all these connections, you can start to see who the key influencers are and how different communities are forming. Now, over on the text analysis side, you've got some really powerful techniques. Word clouds, you've probably seen them. They give you a quick visual of the most common words. Topic modeling can automatically find hidden themes by grouping posts that talk about similar things. And then there's text embeddings, which is, honestly, it's a fascinating AI technique. It turns words into numbers so a computer can understand their meaning and map out how closely related different ideas are. It's almost like creating a family tree of concepts.
But, and this is a really important point, we have to be careful here. A tool can spit out a beautiful word cloud or a super complex network map. But what does it really mean? It is so important to remember that these visualizations aren't raw data, they are interpretations. They're clues that help you ask better questions, not the final answers themselves. And on top of all that, we can add another layer of understanding with something called sentiment analysis. This technique basically analyzes the language in the post to figure out the emotional tone. Is the discussion around a topic overwhelmingly positive? Is it negative? Or is it really polarized? This adds a whole new dimension of emotional context to your data.
Now, I know this can all sound a little academic, but the ability to systematically analyze our digital conversations, it has profound, real-world consequences. Let's look at how this kind of research is actually being used to understand some of the most critical issues we're facing today. This striking image comes from a report by the Social Media Lab at Toronto Metropolitan University. What it does is it visualizes how foreign propaganda works, how it can use a nation's own symbols to try and manipulate its citizens. And this isn't just some abstract theory. They use data analysis to see exactly how this plays out in the real world. For instance, in a study on pro-Kremlin disinformation, these methods uncovered a pretty alarming truth. The more that people were exposed to disinformation online, the more likely they were to actually believe it. And this effect was strongest among groups who said they relied primarily on social media for their news. This is how data analysis stops being about just numbers and becomes critical intelligence. When it comes down to it, learning to analyze the social media fire hose is about so much more than just data. It's about documenting our society as it evolves in real time. It's about writing the first messy but absolutely essential draft of our own digital history. And that leaves us with a final, really important question to chew on. In an age where so much of our public life is happening online, who gets the tools to analyze and interpret it all? If access is limited to only those with money and power, what stories are going to get told? And whose stories are going to get ignored? Democratizing these tools, well, it isn't just a technical challenge, it's a historical necessity.